Welcome to ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast hosted by Victory Lyric. Get ready to be inspired to be all you were called and created to be. Join us as we showcase nationwide artisans and their unique stories. This is your opportunity to explore creativity with diverse crafts, recipes, and tutorials with practical tips for unleashing your artistic side. Let's get ready for spiritual upliftment, healing stories, miracles, and divine goodness. Get ready for an amazing segment of ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast with host Victory Lyric.
Good morning. Welcome to ArieVive Studios. I am your host, Victory Lyric, and I am super excited because we have an amazing guest today with us. And he also has a wonderful podcast and books out. So welcome, Todd, with UnYoked Living.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been really looking forward to this chat today.
Oh, awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a divorced single dad, but I guess at this point, I just call myself single. But, you go through your phases, right? You're married, you're divorced, and then you feel single again. And then hopefully one day you feel like yourself again with no labels. And that's right where I'm getting right now. And I've turned my single empty nester time into some different activities. And one of them is my UnYoked Living podcast, where I help newly single divorcees, men and women, heal from their divorce from what I believe is sometimes a oversight from the church. And it's just where I've been pouring my ministry and my time into, and even written a couple books, as you mentioned.
Oh, awesome. So there was a comment in there that I kind of wanted to revisit. You said you were newly single and then also an empty nester. Yeah. That's a lot of loss at once.
That was the tip of the iceberg. It is a long story that I'll make super short, but I sat with a lady who worked with me, and probably in 2015, the end of 15. And I said, I don't understand why other people have so much pain in their lives. I go, I'm happily married. I've got 3 healthy kids. My parents are doing well. They live 5 houses down. My wife's parents, both healthy, live 5 miles away. I lived in a bubble, had a great job. Everything was perfect. And I just said, why me, Lord? I don't deserve this. It all came crashing down a month later. Everything. My dad got sick, ended up passing away. My mom got Alzheimer's. My wife and I got divorced. My kids moved out. I quit a high-profile job. I moved out of my house. I left my church. I lost everything. Everything I knew disappeared in 18 months. And it was crushing. And to say the least, it was a giant reset in my life. So you caught on to that really well.
Well, Todd, I'm creeping up on that empty nester moment when I've got my last child as a senior in high school right now. Yeah. So I'm kind of feeling that. I've been, single for some time now, but then you add that loss of having, your family in your home, and woo, I'm not looking forward to it. So
no, it's a game changer, and it's a great time to do a reset. Sometimes we're forced into our resets. But when everything that you were pouring into is gone, and then you have to decide, well, what am I pouring into? And it's a great moment because you really have to understand who you are, not what you were doing, but who you are. And a lot of people don't know who they are because they've been too busy doing and performing tasks. And when the tasks are all gone, and you're all the things that are important to you are just doesn't mean they're gone. Sometimes they're gone, right? I mean, people can die, but they can definitely move away and move off on their own. And you just have all this free time, and it's sometimes lonely, sometimes painful, but it also can be a wonderful moment in your life.
It really can. I remember, coming to a place of feeling like God was saying to me, you're untethered. And the untethered feeling is like you're floating in the sky and you're like, I don't feel like anything is holding me to the ground, and I don't know where I belong. All your titles are gone, and wife and mother or business owner, or, all these things, because I had huge loss at the same time when I went through divorce, with businesses and stuff like that. So it's like the carpet comes out from under you. and then you're untethered and you're so busy trying to get tethered again, you know?
It's so funny. You're using the word untethered. My whole podcast is UnYoked. It's the same idea, is that you're under the same yoke pulling, and now you're unyoked. It's like, well, am I supposed to be going this way, or can I now go this way, or can I keep going and they're going a different way? And it's interesting. And then your phrase, and looking to be retethered, it's really interesting. Is, I think, especially when it comes to divorce and relationships, sometimes when a divorce fails, it's natural for us to say, well, then let me go find one that won't fail. And I encourage people, no. Your job is not to get tethered. It's not to get re-yoked. Your job is to sit and do an autopsy and look backwards and look at yourself and figure out what was my part. What could I do better? And we all have some fault. We all have some flaws in our divorce, no matter what happened. No one is 100% guilty and no one is 0% guilty. There's always the back and forth. And so it's just a great time to breathe and assess. And, there's an old phrase, it's called, a tree is best measured fallen, right? You don't measure it when it's growing, it's best measured falling. And when there's a divorce, it's a great time to say, okay, that's dead. And now let me look back on it and measure it and look at it and see what part can I do. So if there is a next time, you're ready. If there's not a next time, you could be the healthiest you've ever been in your life to live on mission. And your goal isn't necessarily to get married again.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be. But I will say that, there is something you can do with that energy that, like you're talking about. So you became inspired to go forward and create a ministry of your own after your experience. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the honest truth is, I don't think I've ever said this out loud. So here I'm going to say it out loud to everybody to hear. But it was when I was dating that I would just hear all the date stories that people would tell about their, here's what happened in my divorce. You learn so much, right? When you date, you hear everybody's backstory. And it's nice.
In a short amount of time.
It's always on the first date, second date, or whatever. You get the long story. And I was, crushed by just the horrible stories that you hear along the way. And I know it's only one-sided, but it's still perception's reality, and the pain you would hear out of their voice just crushed me. And I think too, thinking about I'm dating women, so I'm hearing the woman side, and I just kept seeing this pattern that was it broke my heart. And then, here's the controversial part. And then I'd see some really poor decision making afterwards. Like, oh, I made this mistake. Oh, I made this. Oh, I did this. And I was just like, wow, I would have never done that. I thought to myself, I never said out loud. But I also realized that I had a really good group of people who helped walk me through my fight for my marriage, my divorce, and my divorce recovery. Really good people. And I was blessed to have such good sound advice that I thought, well, I got to share it. I got to share it. And so my ministry really is divorce recovery advice. It's divorce recovery advice, but it's also partly divorce advice. It starts there, and then it goes into how to handle the divorce, going through one. The first 90 days, I tell people, here are all the landmines that you're going to want to avoid. And then it's just all these little milestones along the way that I walk further down the path than most people. And so I just go and say, you're going to run into this. You're going to run into this. You're going to run into this. Here's a great lens to put on when you go through these things. And I just sort of coach. Some of it's original, I guess, but a lot of it is just good practical advice. So I try to take good theology, but I'm not preachy. I am just practical down here. And that's what my ministry is I feel like the church sits up here. Don't get a divorce. Divorce is bad. And then we're down here. Well, we've been divorced. Now what? And I think churches don't do well, and we don't do well in churches after divorces. And I thought I'll create something for the people who don't have a good church or wise people around them.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. Yeah. So you said something that I definitely love to talk about because it is so important. But, you mentioned the word landmines.
Yeah.
And I have kind of a visual I like to give people about, what happens with the landmines and where they come from. But basically, it's like, here we are. We just had this traumatic event happen. We are feeling pretty terrible, and we are now in the valley of disappointment. And what we should be doing is taking the hand of the Lord and letting him heal us and walk on through. But we've got a lot of toxic positivity. So we're going to run up the hill instead and go off to the side and climb up a hill rather than walk on through it because it's dark and it's scary. And I can get out of here. I can avoid this horrible valley of the shadow of death, really. And on the way up, we make all sorts of landmines for ourselves and create even more disappointments with the way that we're trying to avoid feeling sad, feeling the pain. It's a mess.
It is a mess. And I how I call that is just the numbing. It's numbing. It's hard to sit, and when you've been disappointed and you're not healed, no one's healed. Nothing is more frustrating. You run into somebody like, oh, my problem was the other person. Now the other person's out of my life. I'm fine, and I'm just going to go on. And it's like, no. You're not paying attention. And two, some of your activity is numbing. You're just trying to avoid sitting.
Yes,
and
avoiding that feeling and that darkness. That untethered, anxious, yucky feeling. It's grief, and it is not enjoyable.
No, it's not. And once again, there's alcohol, there's sex, there is that codependency and all the crazy, stupid stuff you do with that. Nowadays with the apps, there's just the voyeur mentality of feeling affirmation of, ooh, somebody thinks I'm pretty. Ooh, somebody's swiping on me. And there's so many ways that you can numb right after your trauma event, which what divorce is. It's a trauma event. And it's hard to sit. And let's be honest, life is way more than just like, well, let me read my Bible 24 hours a day. And I'm not drinking 24 hours a day. It's a cycle. And you have your good moments and your bad moments and your moments of wisdom and your moments of foolishness. And we all have plenty, which is once again why I'm trying to point out what they are, because I know how easy it is to fall in those traps.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of them. I mean, you can go online shopping. We can even watch, excessive amount of preachers or something. Anything just to, we think that's even good. And even that can become too much, just I just need to zone out today kind of
thing. I call it the Netflix moments of just turn on Netflix and sit there for 8 hours in a row just to breathe, which I'm okay with rest. That's the other thing too, is I think sometimes, especially in America, I believe that we have this pull ourselves by our bootstraps, entrepreneur. I'm independent. I'm boss woman. I'm in charge of my life. And it's like, I tell people, rest, grab a book, sit in a hammock. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. You're not trying to prove things to your ex of how great you are and that you can make it without them. Breathe, just breathe, rest, pray. Listen, some people pour into church, and that's wonderful. It is wonderful. But to your point,
it can get
dangerous. It's dangerous because, I always say Jesus is the answer. Doesn't mean church is. And I know people sometimes like, oh, no, it's the same thing. Jesus loves the church. No. It misses the point. Jesus is the answer. But that busy volunteering and just consuming Bible study after Bible study after Bible study and showing up all the time the church doors are open, Jesus never asked us to do any of that. That's an American church thing. And if you need to sit, matter of fact, I tell people, if you need to take a little break from church, take a break, breathe. You're going through trauma, and coming out of it is not easy. No matter how much you act like you're fine, you're not.
Well, that's self-compassion. Because it's not compassionate to self to say, grab your bootstraps and go forward and don't feel anything. Self-compassion says, I was one with this person. I went through a lot of trauma. This hurts. This is not comfortable. I need to breathe, and without the self-compassion, it's really hard to heal.
Totally. And what's so interesting about that is this goes back to trust in the Lord, but sometimes it feels like, well, these bills aren't going to pay themselves. I've got to do whatever. And I'm like, well, you're 100% right. we prepare the horse for battle, but the battle's the Lord's. Like we got to let the Lord do his thing, but we have to do our part too. So, sometimes we do have to get up and work, and it's hard. It's hard. I mean, that's the thing about divorce I never considered. I just always thought somebody did something wrong. Somebody's going to be better off by kicking them out and, sign this sheet of paper and you move and everybody's better off with their life. Well, divorce is trauma. That ripping apart, it was one life. To your point, God saw you as one. It died. And with death comes suffering and pain and agony and grief. And it's
grief that sneaks
hard.
up on you.
Sneaks up.
Even years later,
years later. It's a big deal. Divorce is a big deal. And I don't think the church, honestly, I mean, I'm picking on the church because it deserves to be picked on. The church does a horrible job nurturing and coming alongside divorcees. They just do, which is why I'm in business, because somebody's got to step in and really love on those people.
It's true. Somebody has to go sit by the well with that woman and understand and have compassion and say, oh, I've done it too, man. We're not judging here, because somebody's going to sit there and put their arm around her versus say, oh, and it's just that's why I feel like God is calling us up to go out into the world to love on people who the church doesn't know how to support. In fact, not only do they not support it, they don't even discuss it. At most churches, the word divorce is not even mentioned.
No.
And so, it's just as if it doesn't exist, and it exists in half of America. So
and half of the church. It's the church numbers are just as abysmal as the others. You're 100% right. I use an analogy all the time. Church is trauma. It's a car wreck, and we've just been in a car wreck. We come into our church, we're bloody, we're limping, and the first thing a church says, like, hey, how are you doing today? You want to come work in our children's ministry? You're like, I was just in a wreck, and you want to stick me in all the programs that aren't built for this. And then the pastor gets up, and his only thing he could say is, hey, God made cars not to be wrecked. What good does that do me? I'm wrecked, and I'm bloody. Don't tell me cars aren't made to be wrecked. That's not the sermon I need to hear. Oh, you're anxious? Well, the Bible says right here in this verse, don't be anxious. That's not helping.
No.
It's sitting by somebody in their car wreck and healing them and loving on them and telling them, oh, well, we need to do a little bit of therapy here and, physical therapy. And we're going to get you back to not back to yourself. We're going to get you better than you were before the car wreck, because now we have some opportunities. Now that you got out of that bad car, we're going to put you in a better one. Right. That doesn't mean new relationship. It just means we're going to make you a better driver. How about that?
Right. I love it. Yeah. And I love your analogy about, it's like you're in a wreck and you come in and like, oh, would you like to go and work the children's ministry? That's brilliant, because it is what's happening. And you're like, I am bleeding out and I have no energy for that, because grief makes you really exhausted.
Yeah.
And so instead, it's so easy to say, well, where else? And usually there's usually your old couple friends at church and stuff, and you don't know where you fit, when you go to church, and you're like, okay, I don't fit anywhere. And so what are you going to do? You don't have like a bunch of divorced friends because you were just married. So you probably have married friends. Well, now you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll go on a dating app because at least these people get me. I don't even know if I want to date, but I need a friend who understands my situation.
This is the same circle we all get into. What you just said is the common theme, all of us. And our pastor's like, oh, well, they're divorced. They're just out living their life. They don't want to come to church anymore. No, I'd love to come to church if I felt I was seen or heard, or y'all had anything for me at all. Jesus, yes, but your church program, no. And so I try to walk divorcees through what to do about losing your friends and how to move on and how to find new friend groups and how to stay off of the apps. Which I've screwed up that 1,000 times. I think we all get on, get off, get on, get off. Because you get tired of it and
I'm
you're bored.
For a long time now.
Smart, stay off. But making new friends and friend groups and finding. I'll give you a little bit of the taste of something that I said. It's so funny. We get on the apps and we tell people, well, I like scuba diving and I like this, and then we go meet people and it's frustrating, whatever. Well, I'm like, do you like scuba diving? Go scuba diving and see who's on the boat. That person likes scuba diving too. Like, go live your life doing all the things you say on an app you like to do, and find the guy who likes to do it too. And there's your guy. Like,
yeah, because that will be the person on the path that you're supposed to be on. Go be on your path.
that's right.
You won't get sidetracked with people you're not supposed to end up with. Lord knows I've done it.
Yeah, but
I
it
gotta go back
sounds
and find my path.
right. Well, it seems so obvious, but it's like, oh, I like mountain biking. Well, I'm going to wait till I find the right guy on an app, and then we'll go mountain biking. No, go mountain biking, and then find your person, find your thing. Oh, I like going to art museums. We'll go to an art museum and see who's sitting right beside you. It's really pretty simple.
It is, and then of course it's not, because we complicate it, and I don't want to go by myself, and that
Oh,
kind of
all
thing. But
all
even
the
just
things.
the buddies that you make along the way,
That's right. I've met some really, really good people, and I'm probably like you. I'm a closet introvert, so I really look like an extrovert. But I do love meeting people. It took me a while to learn to have peace with that, and once you have peace with it, you realize, man, the world is your oyster. Like going back to what we said 10 minutes ago, being single and being an empty nester is a glorious place, because you can do anything. I don't have a dog or a cat, no animal, and I have plastic plants.
Okay.
And the reason I do is, and I keep a go bag in the back of my car. I could be at a concert in Dallas, and I'm like, I think I'm just going to spend the night down here tonight,
Yeah.
and then work from my laptop tomorrow. Or I think I'm going to go fly and see my sister in California tomorrow. Like, it's a glorious life, and it's wonderful not to be tethered. And the world has so much to offer. The Lord has blessed us with so many. I know we're all waiting on a perfect world. Trust me, I've been through my trauma. I know this world sucks. It does. It does. It's a broken world, and I hate it. I look forward to the next world and a marathon of Lord come quickly. But at the same time, God did give us this earth, and he gave us the arts. He gave us, beautiful nature. He gave us these things. And I know the devil has tried to take a lot of it away from us, but God owns it. We own it. And I love meeting people. I love listening to music. I love watching art. I love walking in nature. I love boating. There's so many great things to do, and we're blessed with airplanes, and we can go anywhere in the world and see anything we want. It's a wonderful life. It really is a wonderful life. And trying to enjoy those things that God has allowed us to enjoy. Like, I don't want people to sit in their beds and think, oh, their life has been crushed, and that that's the only person they're ever going to love, and woe is me, and I'm just going to survive and just try to make it. That's the wrong mindset. Just is. And I want people to go from the embryo, the fetal position, to crawling, walking, running, and flying. And that's my mission, is to get people to move on to the next 2.0 version of themselves.
I love that. And for me, it's, I use the term from victim to victory, helping you go on that journey to where you realize you're victorious and you can do literally anything God called and created you to do and be. So I love it. I love what you're doing. And I'm so glad that you're here. Well, we have another segment.
Okay.
And that would be our victory point of view.
Victory you would not believe.
Try me.
I am so excited. I don't tell the story to a lot of people, but I've told people when they're down in their dump, in the dump, and the midst of it all, where they're like, it's the Red Sea moment where you're against the wall and you do not see a way out. And God has, people sort of ask me, how do you know God's real? Right? As Christians, we get asked that all the time. Like, how do you even know God's real? Well, we have our stories. And this story happened to me while we were married, but while I was married, it happened with my wife and I, but I've taken it through my life with me, and I take it now that I believe God is so real in my life and in our lives that no matter what I face, I know that it's this ace of spades. It's just sitting there like, I serve a living God. And the quick story was, I was self-employed for a while. This is before I worked for an international ministry for over a decade. And you know how it is when you're self-employed. I call it buy a boat, sell a boat, buy a boat, sell a boat. You make a lot of money, and then you don't, then you do. And you got to learn how to manage that. Well, I wasn't great at managing it. So it was buy a boat, sell a boat for me. And in a nutshell, I'm going to say, I think it was $8,000, where we owed $8,000 right then, just to this person, to mortgage plus bills, plus this. And I didn't have $8,000 at the moment. I just did not have it. And I called my wife into the living room and I said, we really need to talk. And I brought all the bills and we laid them all out. And we just prayed, Lord, I don't know how. Like, I don't know how this is going to get paid. And all needs paid. I don't know what to do. We literally laid it at his feet. And when I say the Lord performed a miracle, within the next 24 hours, I had 2 checks in the mail, one from somebody who owed me money from so long ago that I had written it off in my head. They hadn't even contacted me and tell me they were going to write it. I had somebody pay a bill that they were super late on. And then I had somebody write me a check and say, hey, I want you to do some work for me. I don't know what I need yet, but I'm going to go ahead and prepay you so you'll save the time. And to the penny, the money that came in was exactly the money we needed. And I paid it all off. And I put my 3 little kids in the car and my wife. We're not saying we had no money. We had no money. And she goes, the kids, we promised them some ice cream. And I was like, well, okay, let's just get in the car. And I'm driving by the mailbox, and I just checked the mailbox, and in there somebody put an envelope, unsigned, and it just said, here's $100 to take your family out. It's strange. I to this day don't know who did it.
Wow.
Don't know who did it. And just being with people in their brokenness. And the Lord literally had to break me for me to see broken people, because I was too busy living up here. And now that I've been broken, I've been broke and I've been broken. And once you've done that, your eyes change and you don't care anymore about this stuff. You just care about who's in a Job moment. I'm going to go sit by them. I'm going to shut up. Job's friends started off great. They came to his side and they mourned and they started off really good. And then they opened their mouth. And this is why I love the podcast and my YouTube ministry. People will consume when they want to consume and what they want to consume. And I'm laying it all out there. And they bite-size it when they want it. And I'm just giving them good advice without, what did you do? What did you do? What did you do? And God says this. Why are you anxious? Don't be anxious. None of that for me anymore.
Don't be this. Don't do that. Da, 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 da. Okay, well, yeah, I know. I get you. I totally get you, and I appreciate that, because once you have, I say that you walk through these things, and the places of your greatest pain are where you end up anointed to love others, and so you're not then in that space anymore where you have an opinion, because you've been through it. There's no black and white. There's a lot of gray in the mix of trauma.
That's
yeah.
exactly right.
So I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. And why don't you tell everyone how they can find you and find your amazing podcast and books?
Yeah, thank you. Well, so my name is Todd Turner, so it's toddturner.com. And, on there, my other job is helping people raise money for their nonprofits. So that's where I spend part of my time. But my UnYoked Living podcast, there's links to that. And then I think toddturner.com/books is a way to get to Amazon and find the 2. So I have 2 books. One is if you're thinking about or going through a divorce. It's called UnYoked Choices. And the other is, it's a workbook for women. And it's a divorce recovery workbook, not just a book. It's interactive.
Well, very good. Well, we'll have all the links then in the description so that people can go and find you and purchase the book and so forth. And I'm just really grateful that you were here today. And to all of our viewers, thank you so much for being here. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast hosted by Victory Lyric. It's our goal to inspire you to be all you were called and created to be. Join us next week as we showcase nationwide artisans and their unique stories. It's your opportunity to explore creativity with diverse crafts, recipes, and tutorials with practical tips for unleashing your artistic side. So until next week, God bless from your friends at the ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast and your host, Victory Lyric.